right, everybody, welcome back to the Flipping Junkie podcast. Today, I've got a good friend, Ryan Robson, on the show. Thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Danny, how are you, brother?
Doing great.
I get that a lot, by the way. It's Robson, but most people do say Robson.
Oh, Robson. Okay, well, I apologize.
All good, my friend.
Well, I'm going to find out a lot more about you today, and we've been friends for a little while in the seven-figure group, the mastermind group that we're both a part of, and you know your stuff. And I admire, how hard you work and how hard you get into this business, and everything that you do, you're completely focused on finding out how to do it best. And you're just, you're kind of fanatical about, learning everything that you need to learn for everything that you're doing in this business. And so I appreciate it. It's going to be fun today finding out more about you and how you got started. So let's start from the very beginning. What got you interested in flipping houses?
Wow. So my father is a real estate developer here in Phoenix, and he builds houses for a living. He's been doing that since I was born, before I was born. And I remember sitting with him at Rubio's Baja Grill one day. I graduated from high school, and I said, I want to get into real estate and do what you do. And that's what I want to study in college. And I was kind of having this, where should I go in my life? What should I study? And I remember some great advice he gave me. And he said, look, you'll learn real estate. Just real estate is something you go out and do and learn. Go study accounting or marketing or finance. Study something else other than real estate. Like, don't think about real estate right now. Don't worry about it. And, ironically, it ended up being really good advice, which I'll get into later. So I went and studied accounting at ASU and graduated in accounting. I served a mission for my church in Spain for a couple of years, which was an awesome experience. And the Spanish I learned there helps a lot in flipping real estate, as you can imagine, here in Phoenix with the Mexican and Hispanic culture here. The kind of my story, Danny, I don't mean to bore you with all these little details here.
No. The details are what make it good. It's whenever people say I bought a course and I started flipping houses, that's what's not good. I want to know the details. So all details are great. And I'm sure everybody out there listening appreciates that too.
And hopefully somebody can relate to this at some point and provide some value to them. But my mind has always been in sales. I mean, from the very beginning, when I very first started, we met at Rubio's because I was working at Rubio's that day, and I love selling fish tacos. I always say that when I become a millionaire, I'm going to go back and work at Rubio's. Unfortunately, I made $1 million and I'm not there, but maybe when I become a 10 millionaire, I'm going to go back to Rubio's and sell fish tacos. I just love that experience. It was so fun for me to interact with customers and have that, connection with people and selling them tacos. So I've always loved sales since I was a kid, and I wanted to do real estate and do something in real estate. And my dad pushed me towards accounting, which I thought was interesting because it's the exact opposite of the creative mentality, right? It's I went and worked for an accounting firm where they put you in a back room with no windows. You're sitting around one desk. There's 6 people that share that desk. You have your little corner with.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, my friend. Sorry. Can you hear me better?
Yeah, that is better.
All right. Sorry, everybody. And as you can imagine, as a creative mind and a sales mind, that's the exact opposite of what you want to be doing
right.
When you want to be in sales, money with no income limitation, right? Working for $40,000 a year for an accounting firm. But I got to tell you, Danny, it was some of the best experience I ever had. What was great about it for me was it really forced me to be analytical and stop and think about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and see the potential downsides and the risks that you could take on as an auditor. So it was really good. I only unfortunately lasted 2.5 years before I almost went crazy because I wanted to get out there in the world. Yeah. But I think I had mentioned to you in the past that I'd tell you someday why it was such a great opportunity for me to get it up. It was the years 04 to 07 when I was auditing. So all my friends are out there making millions of dollars in real estate. I mean, you could have been anybody and made $1 million from 04 to 07, right? If you tried. If you just had the desire and you worked hard, you could have made $1 million in a year pretty easily back in those days. So I'm sitting here making $40,000 a year as an auditor, and my friends were making $1 million a year buying the boats and cars and the houses, and
You guys
I
had
was just
the crazy appreciation there in Phoenix, right? I mean, the market
we did.
was insane. It was a huge bubble there. So even if, no matter what you bought at it, several months down the line, it was going to be worth way more.
So I had some of my auction friends that I became friends with later would say, they just say next 10,000, next 10. They wouldn't even bid up by hundreds. They just say next 10,000. They didn't care what they bought the house for at the auction because they knew tomorrow would be worth another 50 grand. So anyway, crazy days. But luckily, I was making $40,000 a year from 04 to 07, and everyone lost all their money. I didn't lose all my money, which was good. So in 2007, right before the crash hit, I left the auditing firm to go work for a hard money lender. And I was really excited to make my first kind of entrance into real estate. And this guy, for some reason, somebody had referred me to him and had convinced him that I knew what I was doing in real estate, which I really had never done real estate before other than being around it with my dad. And I was just so excited to have my own office. I mean, literally, I told him he hired me for double what I was getting paid. I was now making 80 grand a year, which I thought was a lot of money back then. And I told him I would have taken 20 grand less if I knew I was getting my own office, especially with the window. So I was stoked for my first real job out, learning real estate. And then the market crashed. And that was, I was working for him right in the middle of the crash. And I remember the day that I lost my job. Ironically, I had just gotten back from a trip from Europe. And I was really upset that I lost my job, and it sucked to lose my job because the guy had no business coming in. He had nothing else to do but let me go. But I was wishing it would have happened right before I left Europe, because I probably would have just stayed in Europe for another 6 months. I wasn't married at the time. I was single. I would have just screwed around. And I had been working really hard for him, so I was excited to take a break. The market was kind of depressed at that point. There just wasn't a lot of positivity back in 2009 in Phoenix around real estate. And I took about 2 weeks off and did nothing and worked out and slept in and watched movies and played video games. And I just got bored as all get out. I mean, at the end of those 2 weeks, I was like, what am I, this sucks.
Yeah,
I thought this would be fun, but this really sucks. I mean, I don't know how long you were single before you married your wife there, but when you're single, you could pretty much live on nothing, right? Now that I'm married with 3 kids, it doesn't work that way anymore. So back then, I had $20,000 in savings, about $25,000 in savings, and I thought, shoot, I can live for another 2 years with this much money. And got really bored, and I found a guy that had some open office space, and I wanted an office with him, and I started kind of seeing some stuff he was doing. He was really into loan modifications, and I thought, that could be the route to go. And I ended up getting really into the short sale game. And that was kind of my first introduction into flipping real estate, was buying short sales.
A good time for it too back then, right? The banks were having trouble selling the properties.
Yep. No, it was great. And back then the market was going down. So I learned flipping real estate as chasing the market down, because it really didn't hit the bottom until about 2011 here in Phoenix. So I had to learn how to find buyers and generate cash offers from Canadians and get really creative.
Oh, wow.
It's the opposite problem of it going up, right? Because back when those auction guys were buying, they knew it'd be worth more tomorrow, so they paid whatever. Well, I had to be really, really careful when I paid for a house, because tomorrow it's going to be worth less.
Right. So what kind of criteria, do you remember what kind of criteria you were using back then, knowing that you needed to get it at a heck of a deal to make sure you didn't lose out?
Yeah, my criteria was sell as fast as I possibly can and get out of this thing before it's too late. So I was always too scared to do the wholesaling of short selling that some people did, or the double escrowing of short sales that people were doing back in the day. I would just read these articles about that, and it just always scared me a little bit. So I closed on them, remarketed them, and sold them as fast as I possibly could, and created some unique ways of doing it. So I rode that train for about 5 years. First year in 2010 was my real first year. I think I closed my first deal in December of 09, but I'd say 2010 was my first year of flipping houses. Did 35 deals that year. I thought, wow, I've got this figured out, and this is great. And I just kept pushing hard and asking for referrals from people and pushing that short sale market harder. And did 60 deals in 2011, and then ever since then, I've kind of averaged that 100 to 125 deals a year.
Nice. And when was the transition to move away from the short sales? Was that like, how long, like what was the percentage of deals that were basically short sales, like for the first couple of years, and then it started trailing off? And what did you move to?
That is a not fun conversation to have. That was a very, you had mentioned that you notice I work hard, and I wanted to bring this up because I think this is important, and it'll relate a little bit to your question here. Somebody asked me the other day that I've been working with a little bit. I hear about all these gurus about being able to not work that much and still close a ton of deals. Is that possible? Maybe. That was kind of my answer. Not really. You don't necessarily see all the hard work they put in the past to maybe get there. Right. But that's a ton of work. And it's not, when you get over that, I'd say maybe 20 to 30 deals a year is that threshold. When you get over that 20, 30 deals a year, you're working your butt off. Right. And you're dealing with employee issues. You're dealing with all this. So I had built this huge organization. I had 10 sales guys or acquisition managers, there's a common term out there that people use, right? But I had 10 guys out there that were pounding the streets that I was paying a monthly plus a percentage of profits on every deal they found. And we were primarily focused on short sales and some foreclosures. And I ended up having one bad sales guy. You had shared some experience in the past with me, and I appreciate that. But I had this one guy that was a bad apple that took down about 6 other sales guys with him. Oh. And it's amazing as you grow your company how I lost sight a little bit of how important the people were in the company. And by no means am I blaming myself for him being a bad apple, but I could have caught it a lot earlier, and I blame myself for that. I let it go too long. I knew some potential issues coming, and I just let it drag and drag and drag until I found out that deals were being stolen and all kinds of, bad stuff was going on in the background, right? And that's hard as a business owner because most people are trusting, and I'm a very trusting person, right? I want to believe everyone has the best interest of everybody at all times. And I don't know, right? I just let it go too long, and it really damaged my whole organization. I mean, not only did he take 6 people with him, I fired 2 more people because I wasn't sure where they stood on the issue.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because we talk a lot more recently about the team and building the team and having the right people in place. And that is huge because I have recently myself, waited too long to let somebody go. And it gets to the point where you're weighing the benefit of doing so against the negatives and what you're going to have to deal with. Yeah. And I think a lot of people just ignore, they just don't even look at the problems. They just completely shut that off because they know if they start thinking about that, they're going to realize all these things that make it, seem impossible to let them go.
Sure.
Until you reach a point like what happened maybe with you, where it solved itself by becoming such a huge problem that you had to take care of it.
It was, and it was a blow up. I mean, it was we're yelling at each other, and everyone in the office can hear it. It got to that point, and it just never have gotten there. And I made that mistake, and I grew really fast, and we were doing 100 deals a year. I had 10 people out there bird dogging, finding deals. I was paying. And so you asked me what their transition looks like, and it kind of forced me into a transition in a way. We were slowing down anyway. So we were needing to let a few guys go as it was because short sales this is 2014 at this point, by the way. And we were kind of thinking, what's the future of this look like? Now, luckily foreclosures were still big here in Phoenix and you can go to the auction and buy stuff. So that kept me going for a little bit, but you don't need sales guys to go to the auction and buy a house, right? So there was some major restructuring. We started outbound calling really hard.
So what kind of sales or marketing were you guys doing with all the salespeople? If you weren't doing auction, what were you doing back then with all of those salespeople to generate the leads to be able to go out and try to put them under contract?
It was pure outbound calling. At the beginning, it was all referrals because there were so many short sales that everybody knew 10 people that were short selling their house. You just had to ask. right? Who do you know that needs to get out of their house? And you had 10 listings the next day, right? It was
So were there
just
not
that many
a lot
in
of
Phoenix.
other
But
competition during that time there in Phoenix?
nobody had it figured out. It's funny. I have this cardboard right here. I wasn't necessarily planning on showing it, but this little cardboard piece right here, when I started my short sale business, I woke up at 2 a.m. and I was trying to figure out what were all the problems with the short sale, the way the short sale process worked. How can I make it more efficient? And I got this idea at 2 a.m. I woke up, and this is the back of my, I shouldn't say it, but it's the back of my laptop that I had just bought. It was like a part of the box or something. And I just grabbed that from the side of my bed, and I drew out the business model that came to me in the middle of the night. And that's the business model that I used. So to answer your question, Tandy, sorry. I took that normal process that people did, and I realized there's 4 or 5 people involved in the short sale, and I try to combine as many people into one group that work cohesively together instead of working apart from each other.
So what does that look like?
Great question. So we had a agent, the buyer's agent, and the negotiator all work together to solve the common issue of selling a house, and all be a team that worked together to solve the issue of the house. Where traditionally you had a listing agent and a buyer's agent that kind of opposed each other in a way, and then you had a bank that you had a kind of a 3-way negotiation going on between the listing agent, the buyer's agent, and the bank. And then on top of that, if you add a retail buyer and a normal seller, now you have these 2 extra parties, and a retail buyer doesn't really understand the idea of, wait, it might take 3 months, it might take 6 months. How does that, what, I don't understand. We just need to buy a house and move into it. So there's a major inefficiency in the retail market that allowed investors to get in. But most investors that have been doing this before, see, I was stupid. I didn't know any better, right? I was just jumping in and be like, okay, this is how you buy houses, short sales. But most of the people that have been in the market before were sending postcards out and buying at the auctions. I mean, think about it. How do you go from getting a list and buying a house the next day at the auction to getting a deal and waiting 6 months to close on it that you may or may not get approved by the bank? Like, as an investor buying that house, you're thinking, why would I invest time in the short sales? And then if you're just the investor and you're putting an offer in on some other listing agent's house, you don't know how good of a negotiator that listing agent is, right?
Right.
You're giving your whole confidence to that negotiator, and then that listing agent gets some higher offer from somebody that's going to end up backing out on them within a couple months, and they go with their offer instead of yours. So I just saw some of those inefficiencies in the process, and I would explain those to sellers and just walk them through. I mean, I think if you see, you probably can't see it. See my little guy with the multiple people at the bottom? That's a buyer putting offers in on multiple houses. So that's what I would explain to sellers, that these retail buyers, they go put 6 offers out there, and whoever gives them the approval letter on, they close. Where I'm an investor, my offer's not going anywhere. You tell me I'm approved, I'm closing tomorrow.
Right.
So I walked these sellers through those inefficiencies and why we're the best group. And honestly, it probably would have been better to get houses at the auction and do it the easier route. But you asked if there's competition. People caught on after a while when they saw what we were doing. They started trying to kind of do some other things to what we were doing. But we were really the only guys stupid enough to invest all that time into short sales at the time.
And that's what I mean about even just in your answering the questions. Typically, I'd ask somebody, was there a lot of competition back then? And they'd say, yeah, there was competition. But you went through and explained, like on a higher level, like a more detailed explanation of the competition and how there was competition, but not necessarily for the short sales because of the issues involved with doing short sales. And you figured out how to make that not so much of a problem so that you could still work the short sales, and in doing so have less competition. I'm sure you still had some competition, but make it appealing for you. Whereas other people like I back then would see those and say, I don't want to mess with all that. Like, I'm just going to do more marketing and find straight deals and just deal with the easier stuff. But I had more competition to deal with. But that's exactly what I meant. It's like, it's really cool how you do that.
Yeah, and it was I mean, you had to create quite a business model. I mean, you had to hire negotiators and people to find the deals, and anyway, it was fun, and there were a lot of thank you for that compliment, but there were a lot of struggles along the way to get there.
Well, it's like you're saying, it makes it sound easy, but I'm sure it still wasn't easy. And I'm sure a lot of people are probably dying to see that diagram that you're showing. Would you mind sending me a picture of that, and I could just put it up on
Sure.
the page?
I've been trying to get that thing framed for 6 years. It's been sitting on my desk, and I never do it. I need to do it. I thought about it this morning, not even thinking I was going to show it to you today. I flipped over it, and I'm like, I got to get that dang thing framed. And you probably can't see it, but there's like footprints on it, like somebody stepped on it, which I'm not that happy about. It's like your first $100 you make at a company, you frame it. You know, that's kind of what I want to do with this. It's like my first business model I ever drew out. Anyway, you asked me what that transition looked like. So it was a tough transition, and the short sales were a fun ride. But once they slowed down, the auctions kept me busy for about a year. It's funny, I made roughly, I mean, I'm going to give you rough numbers here. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was in the $2 million net range in 2013, and 2014 was below $1 million. I mean, it was just a drastic drop off. And I mean, even that sounds like a lot of money, but when you have an organization that's making, you know, a couple $1 million a year with that many people running it, and you go to making less than $1 million, I mean, it's a major issue for an organization, right? Like, you percent of your net income, like, how do you keep the doors open, right? And, you know, people were getting nervous, and this all through the
Yeah, I lost the audio there for a second. You still there?
No, yeah, I got a phone call. Sorry. I wonder if I put it on Do Not Disturb if I'll still get phone calls. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. It needs to be a little bit louder, though.
All right, can you hear me better?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, so that makes me want to go down the route in this interview of how those lessons and that experience of having the organization, the bigger team, and then having a transitioning market or a transitioning business model to where you had to maybe shrink down. How has that affected your building your team and maintaining a team after that point?
I'll tell you what, 2016, 14 and 15, I was in this transition mode. 2016 and 17 were really interesting years. I had to mentally get over, I had made all this money. I had found out how to close, 100 deals a year. And if I say I'm going to close 100 deals a year, I'm going to figure out how to do it. I don't care how. Right? But I had never sent out a postcard or a letter until 2017. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Like, I've been flipping homes since 2009, and I did zero PPC. I had never done PPC. I had never done Facebook. I had never done postcards or letters. And I figured out how to flip 100 deals a year. And don't get me wrong. I mean, 2016, 2017 were strong. I think 16, I probably closed like 80 something deals. 2017, it was like, crap. Okay, this method of buying at the auction and buying off the MLS, it's drying up really fast. I've got to figure out how to send out postcards and letters. I had the money sitting in the bank account. Like, most people are scared because they don't have the money. But I think there's another factor most people don't think of. I had the money and I was still scared. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to start. I didn't know, like, I'm this experienced home flipper, and I had no clue how to send a postcard and what to send and what company to call or what PPC looked like. So
wow,
it was that
interesting. Yeah, it's not just the fear of losing money, but maybe there's the fear of just all the different little things that possibilities, right? I could have it say a million different things. I could have it sized small or large, glossy or not, color or not, full color or not, first class postage. Yeah, you can get into a lot of ifs, what ifs, and this translates to not just postcards but everything else.
It's like that in construction, by the way. Like, try to learn about doors or windows in construction. There's 1,000 moving parts to it.
Yeah. No, it's funny because I was reading a book and a guy was talking about when things get complicated, figure out what it is you're avoiding. He says a lot of times we'll make things complicated when they're not. And it's because we're avoiding something. We're afraid of something. We're just afraid of screwing up or whatever it is, and we're trying to make it complicated, right? Because the postcard, who cares? Like, you could have chosen any of those options and sent it out and found out what worked and what didn't, and then, you know, had success. And I'm sure that's what you did. But the whole hesitation,
I think no, it's talking to guys like you, Danny. Honestly, it until I had other people that helped me give me the confidence to do it. And I started listening to podcasts. I started going to some mastermind groups. I mean, it bothered me so much inside that I was willing to throw $50,000 to $100,000 away, and I was okay with that and not get deals. But I was still not pulling the trigger, and there's something back, and I couldn't figure out what it was. It wasn't money. Like, that's what was frustrating me inside internally, because I'm a driver. Like, when I set a goal, I go do it. And my goal was to be successful in PPC and market and postcard marketing and letter marketing and what these other investors were doing. And, you know, I tried to go to guys in my market, and they were just not willing to share. Everybody was so closed-minded. And that's a goal I've made, is to be just complete open book with people, share what I've done to be successful, share my methods, because I know when I needed that really helped me. And there's enough deals in every market, right? Like, there's enough deals for everyone to share. Just be an open book, give, and you'll be happy.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. So what are some of your tips then for when you moved into having to generate these deals and do the marketing to get these leads in? What have you done that's worked pretty well for you?
I love outbound calling. I had this kind of epiphany the other day that if you can and you have the budget for it, try your hardest not to focus on one source of marketing. PPC will only give you a certain number of deals per month. Postcards will only give you a certain number of deals per month. Here's the problem with that. And this is the hard part about our business, Danny, flipping houses, is you truly don't know not only how many houses you're going to buy next month, but what the wholesale fees are going to be, or what the flipping profits are going to be, what the price of the house is going to be that you're buying, right? What the margins are going to look like. We don't have a industry where you're like, I'm just going to buy a certain number of widgets, make them, and I know I'll sell this many,
Yep.
right? I mean, we're very transactional, and it's a lot of needles in a haystack type approaches, right? So my goal is to put more needles, or create the potential to find more needles in every haystack, my goal. And one way of doing that is to have multiple marketing methods going on at one time. So right now I'm doing outbound calling, PPC, and postcard campaigns. And it's funny because some months in PPC, I'll close 4 or 5 deals, and then the next month I'll close 1. And it's like, crap, you know, if I was just relying on PPC and I built an organization to close 4 or 5 deals a month, well, that month I closed 1 would be very scary, right? And that same analogy with postcards and everything else. And that thing about people getting into this business is they're not successful for a month or 2 and they give up too early. In that 3rd month, they might have closed 7 deals if they just would have held on.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. And I know that you are fully capable. So if you're generating the leads and you have the possibility of making a deal, you're going to make a deal. You know, because that's the other side of the equation, right? You can generate those leads, but if you can't turn those into deals, it might not be the marketing, it's more of the business. And I'm pretty sure you've got that nailed down. What are some things that you've done and we'll get back to the marketing because I still want to touch on that. But as far as, just because my mind's already switched to this now, so we're going to talk about it. But from the side of getting that lead and turning that into a deal, what are things that you've done in your organization to make that more likely to happen? The top things, I'm sure there's a lot of things, but what are some of the top ones that have really improved your conversion rate to deals?
So from a simple method, I've tried to make the profit formula for my acquisition people as easy as possible. So I teach them how to come up with ARVs. I help them come up with the ARV at the beginning if I need to. But really, I educate them on construction. And that's something a lot of people forget with their acquisition people. And the reason why that's so important as an acquisition guy going to the appointment, if you're there, you need to get the contract signed. I can't tell you how many appointments that my acquisition people go on and the sellers say, I met with someone a day or 2 ago and they said they took pictures and they're going to get back to me for an offer in 2 or 3 days. Well, what's really going on there is their acquisition guy has no clue if it's a $20,000 remodel or a $50,000 remodel, and that changes his offer.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So the more educated make my acquisition people on how to come up with the right estimate on what the fix up should be, even if you're wholesaling, right? Because if you think it's a $30,000 fix up and everyone else you're sending those pictures out to knows it's a $50,000 fix up, that's the reason your deal's not selling. It's not that you're necessarily priced wrong. It's you're estimating your fix up incorrectly, right?
Yeah. So what are some good ways to do that? What are some good ways to train your people on those costs?
You keep diving down this rabbit hole, don't you? I love it.
Well, that's what I want to hear. So I'm gonna ask.
No, you're fine. We're gonna keep going. This is good. So hand training is the best, but we create standardized pricing with all our contractors. And I mean, we tie these contractors down to how much you charge to put up a fan, how much does a boob light charge to go in, how much per square foot on flooring. There's a few things that are really hard to get standardized pricing on, and that's drywall, underground plumbing, and some electrical items, right? Like it depends on how long the run is to the panel and stuff that is a little bit outside of my knowledge. But doors, windows, I know what those cost. I know what the material and labor cost is to install them. And I have my acquisition guys count. Like they come back and they're like, there's 9 windows. Okay, I'm going to multiply that by a certain amount. And that's the budget for windows. And there's this many doors. And I mean, it's ways to come up with really quick math.
Yeah.
You know, it's a 2,000 square foot house. Well, 1,800 square feet is going to be tile and roughly 200 square feet is going to be carpet. I don't expect them to get it perfect, but man, they better be within 5 or 10 number, not that much further off, right? So that standardized pricing with contractors, and I've gone through this with a couple guys in the markets that I'm working on right now, and I'm making it sound easy, but it's not that easy. I mean, there's some educating you have to do with your contractors because not all contractors are willing to go that route.
Yeah, and the point there though is to the standardized pricing to figure out what those things are, the main items, and just having those conversations and not just to be a one-time thing where you say pricing's this. You got to follow up and make sure that they are calculating right, or if they have questions that they're going to be willing to come and ask, so that next time they know and aren't just like coming up with some wild numbers. That I think that's pretty big. That's a good point. And then if we go back, so knowing repair costs so that they're more accurate on their offers and maybe can offer more, but still leave the same amount of profit because they just nailed down the rehab cost better. What about
we win deals sometimes because the bid really is 20 and some other wholesaler thought it was 30 or some other acquisition guy thought it was 30. So we'll win that bid because we're willing to pay a little bit more because we know we could do it for 20, right? Because we know our numbers better than them. I mean, you got to have knowledge of this industry. Coming in to flip houses with not knowing anything about construction, I've never understood that. It doesn't make sense. Unless you're just getting such amazing deals, it doesn't matter because you're going to be right every time. It just doesn't exist in every market.
I think that's what saved my butt in the beginning, but I learned pretty quickly. But that's also probably why Melissa, for the longest time, was just doing the books, because then I didn't know that I was spending way more on the rehab than I thought, what I budgeted for. But anyway, that's
I've been there and done that.
She runs all that now. So, so great. So what about acquisitions people and sales training? Did you guys do John Martinez? What are you guys doing for training for sales, if anything?
So one of my main acquisitions guys right now that's doing a good job. He's a big Sandler guy. He's really big on training. If anyone's ever heard of that, it's John Martinez is basically a twist on Sandler. He'd say that Sandler I don't think is currently living. I think he's passed away now, but he's famous for sales training.
So it's Sandler sales training.
Yep. He's kind of the the Bible for sales training. They have real estate specific sales training, but Sandler training in general is just general sales training. But John Martinez basically took Sandler and made it more directed towards real estate and put his own spin.
So do you feel like there's
personally? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask if because I see the sales training and I see people trying to do what's taught in sales training. And when there's no personalization to it or coming from the angle of who you are, it makes a huge difference, in my opinion. Do you feel the same way? Do you talk to your people about trying to turn it into use the same sort of techniques, but only if they're natural for you?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I had to do a really hard sale the other day. I don't go on many appointments anymore, by the way, but I had a sales guy that was out of town, and he really needed me to go on this appointment, so I went on the appointment, and my wife wasn't that happy that I was going on an evening appointment, as you'd imagine. She thought I was over those days of going on appointments, but so I'm out at this appointment, and man, this seller he needed the disappointed dad hard sale, put my hand out there and say, we got a deal, and I'm going to make you feel bad if you don't shake my hand right now and sign right now. This guy needed that to sign. Like, he never would have been able to sign a contract if I didn't push him with that really hard close. Not every seller needs that, right? I want to go back to this thought. So I've got another sales guy. If you do his disc profile, he has a lot lower D and a lot lower I and a lot higher C and S, I guess, are the other two. I'm so high on D and I that I don't even know what the other two letters are. So
I believe it. Yeah.
He's the opposite, this other sales guy, right? And you wouldn't think traditionally he'd be a great sales guy, but he's good because he does what he does. So I explained to him what I did, and we both agreed that that's not his method, and he would never feel comfortable putting somebody in that position because he wouldn't want to offend them, and he wouldn't want to maybe, have confrontation, and that's just not his personality.
Right.
So I truly believe you should sell based on what your personality is, but try to incorporate as many of the sales tactics you need to get the deal done. I mean, I don't know how better to say that. It's hard because
you said it very well. I agree completely with that. And I like how you pointed out the whole disc profile part of it too, because it is typically the high D that's going to have that personality, right? That will use those techniques and it'll be natural for them. But for people that don't, like myself, I mean, I've got a mid-range D, but I feel some of those techniques are just weird for me. And I'm more of the come in and be a nice guy, just be myself.
That probably works for you, and that's okay. And here's the reality: you're going to close deals that I will never close, and I'm going to close deals that you might never close. So you just got to know that when you're going into things that you might not get every deal, but knowing what type of personality you have, I think, is important because it'll help you know the deals you should be closing, right? And then it will also help you know maybe some deals that you aren't closing. Maybe there's some techniques in the S, and like for me, there's some softer techniques that I should be learning and getting out of my comfort zone to do that aren't the hard closes and aren't the very outgoing type of close, right? So anyway, I agree. I think that that's great.
Yeah, and for anybody listening out there, sometimes I forget that there's people listening out there. It's like we're having this conversation, but everybody listening out there, if you haven't done the disc profile before, if you haven't done the personality profile for yourself or anybody on your team, you can do it for free over at TonyRobbins.com. It's TonyRobbins.com. Then down in the footer, he's got somewhere for disc assessment. I'll include the link on the show notes page along with Brian Robson's diagram on the cardboard box there that he's showing on the video. And that'll all be at FlippingJunkie.com/106. FlippingJunkie.com/106. All right, so let's go back. Any other lead to deal conversion kind of things that you've worked on in your business to tweak it a little bit better to get more out of the leads that you're already getting?
Ooh.
We want everything.
I got a lot for you. I don't know how much time we got here. So to get more out of the deals I'm getting, you probably know a little bit about this, Danny, but I'll tell the listeners. I created a buyer's model is what I call it. Fixer-upper is probably the best word, but I'm probably going to get sued now that I just said that word. But it's really what I call the buyer's model.
Is that trademarked?
I don't know. I hope not. Let's assume not. I'm making it's a mutual mistake. I think that's a legal term. I made an assumption it wasn't. So anyway, what I did is I figured out how to identify a buyer who wants to buy in a certain area, or a realtor who has a buyer that wants to buy a certain area, that wants to buy a fixed up house. I then go find the house, buy it. They come in, pick all their upgrades, pick all their finishes. We do the remodel to the way they want it, and then they close the day the construction's done. So basically, the model I've created is I have a guaranteed buyer, and I end up making more money on these deals than I do on the regular flip deals I do. And the reason why is, and I was going to mention this earlier, that I think is important. This same idea, I guess, concept goes with your acquisition guys, that you should train them. Don't overdo houses more than they need for the neighborhood. And what I mean by that is, I can't tell you how many times I see a house in a neighborhood that just like, I know they put 50 grand into it, but they only needed to put 30 to sell it.
Yeah.
And find out what the other comps have done. If they haven't done new windows, don't do new windows. So one way, I just wanted to get that across, but one way we make good money on these deals is we kind of explain to people, we're going to sell you the house at the highest appraised value that we can get. And we're only going to do this, and this on the house. And this, and this is going to be similar to what the other remodels have done in the area. But if you want new windows, love to do that for you. And we charge $5 grand for that. But maybe it only cost me $3 grand, right? And if you want new doors, we'd love to do these new fancy doors for you. And we take them through the home builder method of the design showroom. And we have them pick out their tile, and I know my costs in this stuff, right? So I know I know where to push them on the tile. I know where to push them on the doors, where to push them on the windows, where my margins are as a home builder, right? And I end up making an extra 10 to 25 grand on upgrades in profit on these deals. Now, I've found that $250,000 to $600,000 range has been the best type of buyer for this business model. It tends to be either a more experienced first-time home buyer, maybe an older first-time home buyer, or a second or a third-time home buyer is better for this business model. However, with all the HGTV programs out there, everybody loves the idea.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome idea. And again, one of those things where I would say, too much work, I'm writing it off, I don't want to. But then you went and took it and said, I'm making this much more on it. I'm like, wow, I would have written that off. And here you are, making more because you're doing that and just doing a little bit more. And it's probably not that big of a hassle or headache. What's the median price point over there, so that everybody listening has an idea, including myself, of where you're talking about? Because you're saying 250 to 600. What's the median in Phoenix right now, roughly?
I think it's in the mid twos.
Mid twos, okay.
Yeah, mid to high twos. Yep. So Phoenix is a very competitive market. We have 2 flippers in town that are institutional buyers that are flipping 100 homes a month each.
Wow.
I mean, it's just nuts. So I'll get calls from, a postcard or PPC, and they'll say, hey, my house is only worth $250. I've got an offer here for $225. That's a cash offer from one of these institutional guys. Can you beat it? And I'm thinking, no, I can't beat it. I'm going to offer you $180. What do you mean, can I beat it? I mean, it's not competing against these institutional guys. So I have to come up with efficiencies. It forces me to come up with efficiencies that keep me in business.
Yeah. Yeah, and I always wondered if there was another way to compete with that sort of situation more than on price, because both of us, I mean, if you've been buying from sellers for a while, it's not always about price, right? There's some other situation or issue. Is that something you guys also focus on with your acquisitions, where you try to drill down and find out what the real issue of selling is, and then making sure that you can solve that problem for them more than how much you're going to be able to pay them?
I just had this training this morning with a couple of my sales guys, and I listened to their calls, and I really like to listen to every single call. And if you guys aren't using call software to record your calls, and there's lots of different softwares out there, but record those calls that come in. Even if you're recording your own calls, it's great to refer back to them and see, what did I do right or wrong? But anyways, I was listening to some of their calls, and like one of my sales guys, I don't want to use the word argument because it's the wrong word, but he got into this, like, there was this tension on the call where he said, what is the parking like? And the seller said, what do you mean the parking? And my acquisitions guy's like, well, the parking, like, what's the parking like at the house? And like, they had this, like, he didn't understand what he meant by parking, which he was trying to ask about garage spaces, right? Or whatever. I honestly don't know. No. But I think he was trying to ask how many garage spaces or if there's a garage or not. But the sales guy had in his head that he needed to get this answer on the phone, and because he had to keep diving down this rabbit hole, and the seller was getting frustrated because he didn't understand him. And I just like, what are you guys doing? So I had this training this morning. We talked about that. I said, look, I do want to know the address, and sure, it'd be great to have a few details about the house, but all I care about on that phone call is what is their motivation? Why are they selling? What is the reason they're thinking of selling? How soon do they need to sell? Like, that's all I care about, right? If you want to ask them at the end of the call, once you've set the appointment, hey, by the way, let me just jot down your address. And, oh, was that 3 and 2 baths? Remind me. I find the details on your house as if I already have them, right? Like, hey, I don't have your house details up in front of me. Can you remind me? Is it, that's great if you really want to do that, but don't sound like what's the right word? A telemarketer that takes inbound calls. There's a name for that, where you're just like taking information and writing notes. Like, I can hear one of my sales guys in the background writing down and pausing for 5 seconds after he asks a question.
Wow.
And I'm like, no, just have a conversation with these people.
Build rapport. Yeah.
So build rapport, find motivation. And that call should not last for more than, I think 7 minutes is kind of the number I'm shooting for. Should be under 7 minutes. So when I see the call recording email come through, when it's between 4 and 7 minutes, I know it's a good deal.
Nice. Yeah. So you've shared some really big things, and I hope, that everybody listening had taken notes and realized the importance of a lot of this stuff. I mean, the calls, recording those calls, listening to them, you might think that everything's set and working great, but you got to check on this stuff from time to time, because like you said, you hear situations like that and you're like, wow, it was set to where it was set pretty good, but then it's moved over time to being a little bit more lazy maybe, and just like it changed. And so you got to be on top of all that. And it makes a huge difference, because how much are we paying for these leads, right? Hundreds of dollars per lead. We have to make sure that every single call that comes in is being handled properly. And so, yeah, it's big. So even if you're not doing a lot of deals out there and you're only doing a handful a year, man, this is important. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing all that. And I do want to get back into the lead stuff, because we've spent quite a bit of time on lead to deal. But you had talked about the calls, the outbound calling. Who are you outbound calling, and how are you doing it?
So Mojo has been my primary source. I tried 1,000 calls a day. I have not tried John Martinez yet. He was kind of new when I looked into him. I'm sure he's great. Honestly, I like John a lot, and I'm sure what he's doing is great, but I wanted him to get some more experience. That was about 6 months ago. I probably should have gone in at the beginning. I mean, that's kind of what a lot of people do, but I'm one, because I had it figured out with Mojo and I had my own team doing it. Mm-hmm. The advice I'd give people with outbound calling, and I hear this a lot, that they burn through callers. If you're going to hire locally, and by locally, I mean here in the States, if you're going to hire locally for people to call, do not have them call for more than 2 to 3 hours a day and find something else for them to do. You just get like it truly is looking for needles in a haystack. And there's usually only one needle in a huge haystack of calls. And you're just trying to get lucky and find that person ready to take your call. One, they have to answer, right? And two, they have to be in a position where they want to talk to you. And then three, they have to be motivated to sell their house at that time. I mean, it's like the stars have to align in outbound calling. But you're going to find people you'll never find with postcards, because some of the people would never pick up the phone to call you, but they would take your call.
Yeah, and I know how painful that is. I had a job as an outbound telemarketer when I was a teenager, and that was the most miserable job of my life. I feel like 2 or 3 hours went by, and I look up and literally
Rubio's
15 minutes. Ridiculous, but yeah, that's the thing.
2 to 3 hours is kind of the max
rejection all day long.
I think people do.
What's that?
2 to 3 hours, I think, is the max.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. Yeah, don't expect too much. Set those expectations a little bit lower from the beginning. So who are you calling? Just like equity lists or stuff like that? What are you...
So we call foreclosures. We call canceled and expires. We try to target it as much as we can. Mm-hmm. I don't call the general equity list. I tried it, and I probably want to try it again. I tried it with 1,000 calls a day, and I got 2 deals from it. I think we made, I don't know, 10 to 20,000 calls. It's a lot of freaking calls to make to get
Yeah.
2 deals. I think cost wise it made sense, but the processes at the time, and I've heard they've gotten better, by the way. I'm not trying to knock them, but at the time their processes weren't quite in place. And it's just my personality. Like, if you don't have your stuff figured out, I'm going to move on to somebody that does. Right. Like, I just don't, because of my high D personality, like, I just don't have the mental capacity to give you the patience to figure it out. Right.
Right.
So I'm back to Mojo again, and we're cranking through Mojo. I only have a couple callers on it right now, but I'm in this mode now where ironically, Danny, I'm trying to slow down. I don't want to close 100 deals a year anymore. I only want to do 40 to 60 deals. I would just rather hit more triples and home runs and do 40 of them instead of 100 singles and doubles. And that's just where I am in my life. I mean, I don't know if you saw my Facebook post the other day, but I was in Cancun on a beach, and on my phone, I bought a $700,000 house that was worth 1.2 million. And I just like, how great is life? Like, I finally bought a house on a tropical beach. Like I always wanted to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it was just luck of the draw. I just happened to hit my email, and the stars aligned right there. But while I was sitting there, but
that's a big point. Yeah. You've been through the cranking and trying to do that many deals, and you find out it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's more of quality and having a good time while you're doing it, right?
Yeah, and for those listeners that may be interested, I mean, I don't mean to put too many plugs on your show here, Danny, but I'm looking to invest in people. I mean, I'm not looking for specific markets. I'm looking to invest in people. I'm looking to find the right people first, and then figure out if the market makes sense for me. And I'm doing that in 2 other markets right now, and I've invested in 2 guys, and I'm helping them grow into their own business. And they were doing maybe 5 or 10 deals a year, and I'm trying to show them how to do 30 or 40 their first year and get that experience.
Nice.
So that's kind of where I am in my life, Danny. I'm trying to slow down, invest in people more, put more time into, I don't want to say coaching. Coaching is the wrong word. Like, I'm not trying to become a coach or start my own coaching program.
Yeah, you're talking about more one-on-one type.
Yeah, we're like, I'm giving you money, and my money and time. Like, I don't know how better to say that, right? It's not coaching. It's like, if you lose, I lose, kind of a thing.
So if anybody out there listening wants to find out more about that, what's the best way to get a hold of you for it? Or are you even taking anybody else on right now?
Yeah, I'm always interested. I'm interested in developing relationships. I mean, so the guy that I invested with, the first guy I invested with, when we talked for 3 to 4 months before we ever did anything. We really got to know each other, and just, I put things out there and see how he responded. Sure, he was still interested, and he made a big investment on his. And I mean, I don't want to say I made him, but I mean, he quit his job, and that was one of my kind of requirements. Like, if we're going to be putting X amount of dollars in marketing every month, I don't want to disclose too much about his market. It's his deal. I'll let him talk about it. But if we're going to be putting a lot of money in your market, you can't have a full-time job and take all these calls and go on all these appointments. Like, if you're going to run, you need to be able to run fast, right?
Right.
So this business is hard to run part-time, and I think people are successful doing it sometimes, but you're going to limit yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
You asked me how people get a hold of me. Sorry.
Right.
I went on a tangent.
I know, because that's what everybody's thinking is like, how do I get a hold of you?
Yeah. All
he's going to forget, and he's not going to say it, and then we're not going to know.
Well, I don't know about that. Ryan at azbestoffer.com. You're also willing to look, you can happily look me up on Facebook, Ryan Robson on Facebook. I'm sure you and I are friends. I'm on Flip Pilot, I think, on the group. You can find me out there. But I'm not here to pitch that, and I don't mean to do that. But I really I get a lot of joy out of investing in people and seeing them grow, and that's kind of where I want to be in my life.
No, that's really cool, and I respect that. And yeah, we didn't talk about this. It's not like a planned thing, but I like that you're doing that. And if I didn't think that you were a good person, that I would recommend other people too for that kind of situation, I wouldn't have it on here, but I think you are a great person. If somebody's thinking about wanting something like that, Ryan is definitely the person to contact. So definitely reach out to him, talk to him, start a conversation. Who knows what happens, but, yeah, so I appreciate you being on the show, Ryan. And I know we had a couple audio problems and stuff like that. I'll do a little bit of editing to make it a little bit better, but hopefully everybody heard everything. And if you want to repeat the email, because it might have cut out right while you were saying it, just to make sure everybody got it.
RYAN at AZ, Arizona, azbestoffer.com.
All right, cool. I think we got it that time for sure. And yeah, so that's pretty much all we've got. So if you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, but I do use your lead propeller PPC stuff. I know you're not having me on here to give you a plug, but I my business would not be running as smooth without your PPC work. So I appreciate you and Josh over there. You guys are great.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And how long have you been doing PPC with us?
About 6 months. So
Wow.
that was, I mean, remember 2017 was that year I was like, I got to figure out how to become best for that markets. And I dove into it, did PPC and postcards, and I mean, really dove into that world. And I live it now.
Great. Well, glad to be helping out where we can with that kind of stuff. It gets, especially with Google's changes lately over the last, turn of the new year and stuff, they've changed things around. To stay on top of all that stuff is just, it's a lot of work, but that's why we've got Josh here doing it. He's awesome. He knows his stuff. So thanks for mentioning that. And have a great day, Ryan. It's good talking to you.
Thanks, Danny. Sorry about the audio. I'm going out buy a new mic right now.
Oh, that's cool. And you're going to be in Costa Rica, right?
We'll see you there, brother.
Awesome. All right. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.